I am your ROTC instructor. My name is Second Lieutenant Johnny Paul E. Portalisa Odas 137889, Philippine Army Reserve. And here are my qualifications. I am a graduate of Bachelor of Secondary Education major in Mathematics at De La Vida College, Cotabato City, Maguindanao on 13 March 1999. Studied Master of Arts in Teaching Mathematics at Sultan Kudarat State University, Bacoran City, Sultan Kudarat, earned 27 units from 2009 to 2011. Graduate of Master in Mathematics at Notre Dame of Marbelle University, Coronadal City, South Cotabato on 27 October 2018. With regards to my military background, I am a graduate of Philippine Army Candidate Soldier Force Class 28-2000 at 6th Division Training Unit, 6th Infantry Division, Philippine Army at Carmen, North Cotabato on 15 December 2000. Graduate of Mechanized Infantry Operations Training Class 01-2001 at 2nd Mechanized Infantry Battalion Light Armor Brigade, Philippine Army at Kamsyong Poawang Datu Linsing Suat, Maguindanao on 05 March 2001. Graduate of Scout Ranger Orientation Course Class 47-2003 at 1st Scout Ranger Regiment Special Operations Command, Philippine Army at Camp Texon, San Miguel, Bulacan on 18 December 2003. And I am also a graduate of Philippine Army Officer Candidate Course Class 25-2004 at Officer Candidate School, Training and Doctrine Command, Philippine Army, stationed at Camp Kapinpin, Tanay Rizal on 13 March 2004. This time I'm going to discuss to you the topic on military justice system. The scope of presentation are as follows: definition of terms, types of cases, person subject to military law, scope of military law, role of the military, role of military during normal conditions, classifications of courts martial composition, components of military justice, and punitive articles of war. Definition of terms. Military justice is the system of enforcing discipline and administering justice in the military service. Military justice system, an organized and established procedure to enforce discipline and administer justice in the military. Justice, the maintenance and administration of what is just by the impartial adjustment of conflicting or assignment of merited rewards and punishment. Military law, rule of action mandatory in form duly established and promulgated by competent authority for common good. Articles of war are articles contained within the Commonwealth Act No. 408 as amended by Republic Acts 242 and 516 that govern the armed forces of the Philippines and the Philippine Constabulary. Dependent, a person who is sued in the civil case, a person who is accused of a crime in a criminal case. Plaintiff, a person who starts an action against someone in the civil court. Types of cases. Administrative case are those that result in decisions not involving penal sanctions and may take such disciplinary or instructive forms of admonition, reprimand, and the like. Those are usually disposed of all commanders detached unit to the highest command level. Punitive cases, cases subject to the imposition of penal sanctions, as provided for in the Articles of War provisions. are those that result in fine, hard labor, deprivation of liberty, or combination of those whenever guilt of those involved are proven. Persons subject to military law. All officers and soldiers in the active service of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, members of the reserve force from dates of their call to active duty and while on active duty, individuals undergoing military instructions, all other persons lawfully called, draftees, or ordered into, or to duty or for training in the service from dates of their calls, drafts, or order to obey the same. Cadets of Philippine Military Academy, flying cadets of the Philippine Air Force, flying schools, and probationary second lieutenants. All retainers to the camp and all persons accompanying or serving with the Armed Forces of the Philippines in the field in time of war on when martial law is declared. All persons under sentence adjudged by courts martial. Sources of military law. Commonwealth Act No. 408, an act for making further and more effectual provision for the national defense or by establishing a system of military justice for persons subject to military law signed by President Manuel L. Quezon. Constitution of the Philippines and international law. Role of the military. In consonance with national objectives, uphold the sovereignty, support the Constitution, and defend the territory of the Republic of the Philippines against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Promote and advance the national aims, goals, interests, and policies. Plan, organize, maintain, develop, and deploy its regular and citizen reserve forces for national security. Assist and support the national government in its task of nation building. Perform other functions as may be provided by law or assigned by higher authorities. Role of the military during normal conditions. Perform civic action, law enforcement duties, socio-economic programs, enhancement of training programs, strengthening of reserve force, upgrading mission, objectives or goals to include policies, formulation of self-reliance program, enhancement of public relation program, upgrading of morale and welfare of the members of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, enhancement of sports and other recreational activities. Classifications of courts martial. General courts martial may consist of any number of members not less than 5. Following may appoint general courts martial: the President, Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, any commanding officer or superintendent of the military academy when empowered by the President. Can impose the following: deprivation of liberty on shore, solitary confinement not exceeding to 30 days, and solitary confinement on diminished rations not exceeding to 30 days. Special courts martial may consist of any number of members not less than 3. Following may appoint special courts martial: commanding officer of major commands, task forces, regional commands, or divisions, when empowered by the President; commanding officer of garrison, camp brigade, regiment, detached battalion, of other detached command or commissioned vessel. has the exclusive jurisdiction to try all other persons subject to military law, excepting officers, for offense not capital in nature and whose probable sentence includes confinement not exceeding 6 months, restriction to limits, hard labor without confinement not exceeding 3 months, and reprimand, admonition, and demotion in rank. Summary courts-martial shall consist of one officer. Following may appoint summary courts-martial: commanding officer of garrisons, forts, camps, and other places where troops are on duty, and the commanding officer of a regiment, commissioned vessel, detached battalion, detached company, or other detachment, shall not have the power to adjudge confinement in excess of 1 month, restriction to limits for more than 3 months, or forfeiture or detention of more than 2/3 of 1 month pay. Courts-martial composition: all commissioned officers in the active duty. No distinction exists among the various classes of officers in the military service. Second lieutenants and members of the nurse corps and reserve officer on active duty training must or may not serve on courts-martial. A law member who shall not be an officer of the Judge Advocate General Service shall be detailed as one of the members of the General Courts-Martial. Components of military justice. Investigation is the process of looking into the circumstances of a case or purpose of verifying and establishing the facts. Prosecution is the process of officially accusing someone in a court of law of committing a crime. Trial of adjudication is the process or act of making an official decision about the trial. Judgment of decision, an official legal decision. Punitive Articles of War. Articles of War were promulgated effective 14 September 1938 when the unicameral Philippine National Assembly enacted Commonwealth Act No. 408, which became the basic law that gave the guidance in the operations of the country's armed forces, then known as the Army of the Philippines. There are 120 articles, most of which were lifted from the U.S. Uniform Code of Military Justice. It is for this reason that our Articles of War have the same substance as the American Military Code of 1928, which was found applicable of Philippine condition. Enlistment Masters Returns. Article 54. Fraudulent enlistment. Any person who procures himself to be enlisted by willful misrepresentation, concealment as to qualification for enlistment, and receive pay and allowances. Instance of offenses: concealment of previous dishonorable discharge, concealment of discharge without honor, concealment that he was a deserter, false representation of marital status. Fraudulent enlistment is not void, but voidable only at the option of the government. The offenses can be waived and the soldier may be retained in the service. Maximum punishment: dishonorable discharge, forfeiture of all pay and allowances, 1 year confinement and hard labor. Article 55. Officer making unlawful enlistment. Any officer who knowingly enlists or musters into the military service to any person whose enlistment or master is prohibited. Article 56. Postmaster. Any officer who are make postmaster of a man or animals. Sign, direct, or allows the signing of any master roll, knowing to the same contain false statements as to the absence or pay of an officer or soldier. Wrongfully takes money or other consideration. Punishment. Dismissal from the service. Suffer punishment as courts-martial may direct. Example of offense. Mastering of any person by wrong name. Mastering any person a soldier when he is not a soldier. Including officer and men as present when they are absent from the regiment. Including officer and men as member of the unit after they have been discharged or dead. Article 57. False return. Committed by officer who render false report to superior authority on the return of troops under his unit or arms, ammunition, funds, etc. False return. Punishment. Dismissal from the service. Suffer other punishment as courts-martial may direct. Falsification of public office, employee, notary, or ecclesiastics. Article 58. Acts constituting desertion. Any officer having tendered his resignation and prior notice or acceptance quits his post or proper duties without leave and with intent to absent permanently. Any officer without having first discharged against enlist in the armed forces of the Philippines or armed forces of foreign country. Any person subject to military law quits his organization or place of duty with intent to avoid hazardous duty or shirk important service. Article 59. Desertion. No intent to return. Any person subject to military law desert or attempt to desert the armed forces of the Philippines shall, if the offense committed in time of war, shall suffer death or such other punishment as courts-martial may direct. At any other time, any punishment that courts-martial may direct except death. Article 60. Advising or aiding another to desert. Any person who advises, persuades, assists another to desert the service. Punishment. Wartime. Death. Committed at other time, any punishment except death. In advising or persuading to desert, it is not necessary that there is actual desertion. It is important that the person have induced the act. Article 61. Entertaining a deserter. Any officer having discovered a deserter in his command, and who retains such deserter without informing superior and concerned authority, shall be punished as courts-martial may direct. Article 62. Absent without leave, or AWOL. Any person subject to military law who fails to report at fixed time to the properly appointed place of duty, goes from same without proper leave, absent himself from his command, guard quarters, station without leave. Punishment. As courts-martial may direct. AWOL is lesser offense included in desertions, disrespect, insubordination, mutiny. Article 63. Disrespect toward the President, Vice President, Congress, or Secretary of National Defense. Any officer who uses contemptuous or disrespectful words against the above. Punishment. Dismissal from the service. A courts-martial may direct. Mere adverse criticism uttered in a political discussion not intended to be disrespectful is not violated in this article. Article 64. Disrespect toward superior officer. Any person who behave with disrespect toward his superior officer. Punishment. A courts-martial may direct. Offenses. Words like open declaration of intention to disobey orders. Disrespectful words uttered against an officer in the presence of other officers. Acts neglecting the customary salute. By indifference, insolence, or rudeness in his presence. Article 65. Assaulting or willfully disobeying superior officer. Any person subject to military rule strikes his superior officer, draw or lift any weapon. Officer violated against him being in the execution of his office, willfully disobeying any lawful command of his superior. Punishment. Death or a courts-martial may direct. Article 66. Insubordinate conduct toward non-commissioned officer. Any soldier who strikes or assaults or who attempts or threatens to strike or assault or willfully disobeys orders of a non-commissioned officer or uses threatening or insulting language or behaves in insubordination or disrespectful manner toward the non-commissioned officer while in an execution of his office. Punishment. A courts-martial may direct. Article 67. Mutiny or sedition. Any person subject to military law who attempt to create or who begins, excites, causes, or joins any mutiny or sedition in company, party, post, camp, detachment, guard, or command. Punishment. Death or a courts-martial may direct. Mutiny. Inserted insubordination on opposition, defiance of, or resistance to unlawful military authority by two or more persons subject to such authority, or neutralize it for the time being. Sedition. Form of resistance to civil power demonstrated by riot, disorder. Intent alone is not sufficient no matter how deliberate and fixed, or even if there is unanimous conspiracy. The offense of mutiny will fail. In other words alone, unaccompanied by acts, will not suffice to constitute mutiny. Article 60. Failure to suppress mutiny or sedition. Any officer or soldier present at any mutiny or sedition does not use his utmost endeavor to suppress the same, of having reason to believe that mutiny or sedition is to take place, does not, without delay, give information to his commanding officer. Punishment. Death or a courts-martial may direct. It is crime simply to stand by while mutiny is being committed. Article 69. Quarrels, frays, disorders. Any officer, non-commissioned officer, have power to part and quell all quarrels, frays, and disorders among persons subject to military law, and to order officers who take part in the same into arrest, and other persons subject to military law who in the same arrest or confinement as circumstances may require, until their proper superior officer is acquitted therewith, and whoever being dared to refuse to obey such officer, or draws a weapon upon otherwise threatens or does violence to him, punishment, death, or a courts-martial may direct, as amended by Republic Act 516. Arrest and confinement. Article 70. Arrest or confinement. Any person subject to military law charged with crime or with an offense under this article shall be placed in confinement or arrest as circumstances may require. But when charged with a minor offense only, such person shall not ordinarily be placed in confinement, or will break his arrest whether before or after trial, or sentence and before he is set at liberty by proper authority. Punishment, as courts-martial may direct. Article 71. Charges. Action upon. Charges and specifications must be signed by a person subject to military law, and under oath either that has personal knowledge of, was investigated, the matters set forth therein, and that the same are true in fact, to the best of his knowledge and belief. Article 72. Refusal to receive and keep prisoners. No provost marshal or commander of the guard shall refuse to receive or keep any prisoner committed to his charge by any officer belonging to the armed forces of the Philippines or the Philippine National Police, provided the officer committing shall, at the time, deliver an account in writing, if the crime of offenses charges against the prisoner. Punishment. Any officer or soldier, as courts-martial may direct. Article 73. Report of prisoner received. Every commander of the guard whose charge a prisoner is committed shall, within 24 hours, after such confinement or as soon he is relieved from his guard, report in writing to the commanding officer the same of such prisoner, the offense charged against his and the same of office committing to him. Punishment. Fails to make report, as courts-martial may direct. Article 74. Releasing prisoner without proper authority. Any person subject to military law without proper authority release any prisoner duly committed to his charge, or who, through neglect or design, suffers any prisoner so committed to escape. Punishment, as courts-martial may direct. Article 75. Delivery of offenders to civil authorities. When any person subject to military law, except one who is held one by the military authorities to answer, or who is awaiting trial or result of trial, or who is undergoing sentence for a crime or offense punishable under these articles, is accused of a crime or offense committed and punishable by law or by ordinance, the commanding officer is required, except in time of war upon application duly made, to use his utmost endeavor to deliver over such accused person to the civil authorities, or to aid the officers of justice in apprehending and securing him in order that he may be brought to trial. Punishment. Any commanding officer refuses or willfully neglects, except in time of war, to deliver over such accused person to the civil authority or to aid officer of justice in apprehending and securing him. The punishment: dismissal from the service or a courts-martial may direct. Other articles of war. So these are the articles of war not being discussed here. So preliminary provisions and courts martial, that's from articles 1 to 53. War offenses from articles 76 to 83. Miscellaneous crimes and offenses, articles 84 to 97. Courts of inquiry from article 98 to 104. Miscellaneous provisions from article 105 to 120. These articles of war can be read or studied through this source. Amendments. Commonwealth Act number 408 was amended by Republic Acts number 242 and 516, series of 1948 and 1950 respectively. So these are the sources. Also, Article of War 105 was amended by Presidential Decree number 1968, series of 1985. This is the source. Then Article of War 105, we are going to put emphasis here. So this is the disciplinary power of commanding officers. A commander's choice of action will be limited by his rank and the level of command and position. Following punishment may be imposed on both erring officers and enlisted personnel. These include withholding of privileges, restriction to certain specified limits, arrest in quarters, forfeiture of pay, detention or withholding of pay, deprivation of liberty, reprimand, correctional custody, extra duties, and reduction of rank. So if you have some questions regarding this topic, you can ask your instructor, and they will be more willing to answer your questions. So that's all for today. Thank you and good day.